Ladies and gentlemen, what's up? BC here. Welcome back to another episode of Supreme Being. Shout out to the team. Shout out to distinguished agents. Shout out to everybody who supports. Again, as always, if you guys want to check out my website, briancasellacoaching.com, get your free bonus. Number two, you now have the ability to schedule a free strategy call with us to help you out. The links are in the description and also on my Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. And lastly, join us and become an icon ninja at eXp Realty to all the realtors. I also have that everywhere on my Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. So let's get into it. I named this podcast "Emotions Are the Language of Decision." I was doing a training today for my salespeople, and I said that line. Now, I don't remember ever reading that in a book. I just kind of said it, and it came to my mind, and I thought, hey, that's a good quote. I put it on Facebook, and I said, why not discuss it with everybody for a couple minutes on the podcast, because I felt that whole training and conversation was very relevant, right? We know if somebody like you're selling or anybody's going to make a decision to change their lives, make a choice, make a change, anything, right? Anything in between. Normally, if we're making decisions, we're thinking about it and there's no emotions involved. We're not really feeling it. We're just kind of going through a logical process. Odds are, in most cases, that decision doesn't stick. It doesn't last. We don't get into action. And there's very little, I guess the word would be umph behind that decision and seriousness, right? Like you guys can relate. Where you're like, yeah, I'm going to do this. But there's not really much emotion behind it. So it fizzles out. Maybe that day, in a day or two. It doesn't carry with you. Now, if you've ever been to an event, right? You have a powerful meeting. Or you have a powerful discussion, right? Conversation with somebody, and it's impactful. They tell a good story. You're moved emotionally, and at the end of it, or somewhere in the middle, you come to a decision, or you're like, hey, I need to do this, or you know what? That really inspires me to do X, Y, Z. Well, because it was an intense or very deep conversation or event, whichever one, you were moved emotionally. A thought or idea sparked into your mind, you made a commitment or a decision, the likelihood in the second example of you moving forward with it obviously is much higher. Emotions are the language of decision. If you can't move yourself emotionally, nothing's going to happen, right? I'm bringing that up because it first starts with our own process, but more importantly, it's with other people, right? If you listen to me, I'm assuming at some level you are a subscriber, would be the word, right? To language, communication, wanting to move people with your words, be a better salesperson, right? You're an entrepreneur, you're marketing your brand, right? That's right up your alley. Whether you think it is or not, it is. And you have to come to appreciate and want to learn that stuff at the highest level. But we know we have to move people emotionally. So I know, regardless of what people think about me, when I make videos, when I do speeches, I move people emotionally. I help people make changes and come to decisions and do a lot of stuff. This is why I've had success over the years, whether traditional real estate and sales, online stuff, coaching, events, speeches, whatever you want to, focus on, whatever you want to call out, whatever you want to highlight. At the end of the day, I can do that. And I do it all the time, every single day at this point. The reason I'm bringing this up is there's a lot involved in this. And I want to focus today a little bit, at least, on the interaction with the customer. This is why there's so much laced into my dialogues and my scripts that dives deep into people's emotions. I want to ask questions and explore that. I want to find out what the core driving emotion is behind their decision, their interest in my product or service, so we can get around that, because that's going to be the determining factor if they buy my product or service or whatever it is that I'm pushing to them. We have to get to that. That is it. If we can get to that, we're good. All right. But what do? We have this logical race with people down the script, which is fantastic. We have to have the script and the dialogue that we create or that was given to us. But the core of the conversation has to revolve around those core driving emotions or emotion, right? And you can really pick up on this stuff, if we're going to get into it technically, listening to what people say. They'll let you know why they're interested or this and that. If you ask the right questions and you open up the dialogue and you listen, all that stuff comes out. How they say things, how they refer to particular people or subject matter, what the moment was. I asked that question. When was the moment that you decided, hey, I need to blank? I want to buy this. I want to sell my home. I want to buy a house. Because then I'm having them access a part of the mind that's going to give me the imagery and the story behind that moment and the emotions and the events that occurred that caused them to say, hey, I'm interested. And that will give me all the ammunition that I need if I really listen, right? So this is something that has to be explored on the customer basis, but also within you. I hype myself up all the time. Not rah stuff, but just thinking about what I'm going to do today and training my people and investing my time into my agents and growing my businesses. That shit fires me up, man. I'm excited to do that. So I pour myself into it. And you best believe when I train and I'm involved in these activities every day at whatever business or in all my businesses, there's a level of intensity and energy behind it and emotion. Energy and motion, emotion. I'm not just going through the motions. I'm not just lackadaisically doing things like, oh, okay, we have another training today. Nah, man, I'm going hard every day. Same thing when I flash back and rewind to 10 years ago when I first started in real estate. And I was just a one-man show, a one-man employee, no social media, just out there banging on doors, making phone calls and building my brand and my business from the ground up, grassroots, which I did for years and years. But every day there was a spark behind everything that I did. There was conviction behind everything I did. I was taking all those old raw emotions of feeling like a failure and the uncertainty and transmuting, that's the word, into a driving force to move. Because that's the biggest issue with people in regards to emotion. They bottle up emotion instead of transmuting it. You need to be able to take whatever emotion is given to you or whatever emotion you're feeling and channel that into action or towards your purpose, whatever that is. Wholeheartedly channel it into that shit. Don't just let it linger and sit. That's the wrong way to go about it. Now, that's going to be a topic I can't entirely unpack today on this one, the actual transmutation and the process and how to do it. But I've done other episodes in the past where I'm sure I've, at least lightly touched on that. So you can browse. But that's what this thing is. I'm going to take the pain that I feel from a failure, temporary failure, and use that as fuel to keep going. I'm going to take the temporary defeat when the customer doesn't hire me and goes with somebody else and buys their product or service. And I'm going to use that as fire and fuel to move forward the next day and go even harder and find 3 customers instead of 1. I'm not going to let that stop me, right? Because we're the gatekeepers of that. A situation or an emotion that you feel. You allow that to either move you forward or stop you. You're the gatekeeper for that, to see how these things affect you and what you do moving forward. And you have to first understand that, because that's the principal part of this equation. You are the controller of it. You are the creator of this. You are the conductor of the orchestra of your emotions. Yes, other things can have an influence and temporarily sway you, but ultimately where it goes or where it ends up is entirely on you, because you're like a tuning fork. So you will tap into the people and energies and emotions around you, but how it takes its course through you. And if it has a transformation and where it ends up, now that's under your control. Now that's under your control. That's the cool part about this thing. So we're not in this constant battle with the outside to block stuff. No. But if you come in contact with it, you have control of how it's going to end up. Now, that's something you have to believe and understand. Because a lot of these concepts to people who are new to them, they sound noble, they sound cool, but they're like, nah. It's almost like when you're trying to explain to somebody who believes that, hey, if everybody in my family is an alcoholic, I'm going to be an alcoholic and I'm not going to be able to change. Somebody who wholeheartedly believes that. Well, if you come with them and you come to them with the mental technology to say, hey, you can change that. If they don't believe that they can change that, it doesn't matter who talks to them. Nothing's going to change. They first have to come to the decision and conclusion on their own, saying, hey, you know what? This is a possibility. Now, typically that happens through self-exploration, maybe listening to lectures, but there's a genuine desire first and seed that's planted to say, you know what? I want to try something different. Maybe we can. Let me explore some options to see if, we can do something about this. But if that decision is never made and that seed is never planted, it doesn't matter what they hear or who they come across. Nothing's going to change. That's the power of that belief and internal compass of where you're headed and how you're going to process and perceive this world. That is that bottom level that you have to work on and dig up and plant the right seeds. This is a whole revamping and reprogramming of your mental software. So in regards to the emotions, right? Typically, we'll only do those things and access those emotions during traumatic periods or when our back is against the wall. That comes up all the time, right? Until you're like, that's it, I'm sick of this. But why do we wait until those moments? I get it, why you would make change during that moment, because it's a moment of desperation. But you know that, though. Why would we wait until those moments? See, the top people don't wait until those moments. The people who are really gung-ho about personal evolution and change and growth don't wait until those moments. They start now. They do it often. They're always self-analyzing and interpreting and seeing, hey, is there any new flaws? What do I need to work on? What can I improve? All the time. All the time. I'm doing this continuously, gauging and checking myself and all those things all the time. And that's what you have to start doing too. So think about it, right? Let's get into the practical application of this. When's the last time you bought a car or made a major life decision like that didn't involve emotion? I can tell you that every car that I bought, I was super excited to buy. Yes, there was a logical aspect to it, but the emotion was like really what got me to be like, okay, yeah, I really want this thing. Like big time. Right? Maybe the last time you got in a verbal confrontation with somebody, emotions were high. Well, of course, because normally you wouldn't just go and yell at somebody or tell them to die and all the other stuff that you see people do on social media, right? It's just flared up emotions that are out of control. Can you harness it, though? And can you channel it towards something productive? Can you see something and then immediately get back to your cave and work either on that and combating it and actually doing something about it, or channeling it into your own life? I've seen people, lose loved ones and family members and friends and channel that into, you know what, I'm going to do this for my dad. I'm going to be the biggest success. That's the language of decision right there, and really using your emotions properly. Or for another person, somebody that they know might die, and that's their excuse forever to be a bum and their excuse to be a criminal and not do anything with their lives. Well, how could I do anything with my life, Brian? My mom died 10 years ago. One person uses it as fuel to achieve. The other person uses it as an excuse. What changes? The individual, their interpretation, and how they deal with those emotions. One bottles it up. The other one does something about it and transmutes it. Now, there's many other factors in that particular example, but that's one of the things that's being done, and one of the major differentiating factors is that one gets drowned in the emotion, the other one uses the emotion. Big difference there, right? So now when we're dealing with customers, this is why your questions have to have weight to them. Like when I'm selling my stuff, right? Let me walk you through it. Let's say I'm selling my stuff to somebody, right? One of my programs. One of the things that we emphasize and that's on a lot of people's mind is, how long is it going to take for me to be successful? How long until I get my first deal or get some money in my pocket, right? Whether it's my industry or any industry, cash flow. So one of the questions I ask people that I know will hit them emotionally is, how long can you survive? You start today. When are you out of money and back against the wall? Is it a month, 3 months, 6 months? How long can you survive? Now that slaps them in the face with a reality and makes their mind conjure up emotion and imagery that I'm going to utilize in order to sell them. Of course. Why? Because it's relevant. I know for a fact the people that I train and my students and my team members, I can fast track a lot of things that normally would take them way longer, among many other things. But that's one thing I can hang my hat on. But I know an emotional driving factor for most people is that. They know time is of the essence. So of course, I'm going to discuss that. That's a hot topic that no matter who I talk to about that, it's going to hit them emotionally, man. And these are the types of things that you have to look for. Aren't you sick of living paycheck to paycheck? Aren't you tired of not being able to live the life that you want to live? Aren't you tired of seeing other people do things that you wish you were doing? Right? Basic stuff like that. Now, there's a million questions I ask people, but those are just a few that are thought-provoking and emotional triggers and emotion-provoking type questions, because they cannot be ignored, because when I say the question and they think about it, it conjures up particular imagery that affects them emotionally, especially this target audience that I would be, and demographic that I would be targeting and speaking to. Not the average person. This is going to be specifically for the people that are going to be sold by me or that are going to come in to see my stuff, right? But this is the level that you need to operate at, because then you can figure out what moves you. And it's safe to say, if we knew more about ourselves and what moves us, would it not be infinitely easier to get off your ass and do what it is that you're supposed to do? Why don't you know your own emotional driving factors? How come you don't emphasize them? How come you don't push them? How come you don't make it a thing to really get down and use them? I love when my back is against the wall and I'm being challenged, me personally, especially now. Man, I use that shit to move forward at 100 miles an hour and work and be creative. And I use it as fire to move forward, not to be pressured and crushed into submission, which is what most people do. I don't allow that to happen. Forget it. No way. Why would we allow that to happen? So ask yourself, what's your understanding in regards to this, whether at the personal level or in the execution level, like when you're selling or influencing people? Because emotions are the language of decision. Everything you do, from the foods that you eat to the clothes that you wear, all that stuff is a decision made mostly by emotion. We know that when people buy, they buy emotionally and justify logically. We know this. But when's the deep dive going to happen? Where every single thing about you, like let's say you're in a interaction with a customer, every single line that you make, every gesture, the undertone is this. Like every single thing that I do, I'm going to impact them. Every single thing that I say, every time I look at them in the eyes, everything is going to be just strategic and tactical and just perfect, right? Like the old product I had, the sales technician. It's going to be just boom, 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 boom. Like I'm an assassin when it comes to this stuff, because that same process can be applied to self. Right? But that's the type of dedication that you have to add to this thing, and a better understanding, because when you're in those moments and you see how people respond and you start gathering experience from doing this stuff, not only with yourself, but like in sales situations, you start to get very well equipped at recognizing things and knowing how to push people's buttons and do what it is that you need to do. Because when that's backed by somebody who's ethical and honest and transparent in their business dealings, not only with themselves, but with others, man, now you're really an effective salesman, and you're doing good to people because you're doing right by people too. You're not just selling people random shit. You're selling people what they need. And again, if you can't move people emotionally, or you can't get them in a good emotional state, they're not going to buy from you. I don't care what you're selling. Now, we all know that to a degree. But if you're not having enough touches every day in conversations and real life experiences, these things can seem very out there, or, yeah, it sounds good in theory, but this isn't theory. It can be taught and considered theory, but in application, it's extremely powerful. So I would make a to-do list for yourselves on a personal level and on a professional level. Some tweaks that you need to make and some changes that you need to make to really tap into emotion. Maybe for you, it's go to an event and get out of your environment so your emotional state can be affected differently and influenced differently. Or break out of your routine for a day to do some, exploration on where your life is headed and what you want to do, and get clear. And there better be some emotion involved. Otherwise, nothing's going to happen. Same thing with your customer. What do your dialogues and presentations feel like? What do they sound like? Is the person that you're talking to enjoying it? Are they having an experience, or is it just a regular, everyday, mindless conversation like they have with everybody else? Because if it is, and you're trying to sell them something, it's not going to go anywhere, and you're not even going to hold people's interest. And that's the first thing you need to do, is capture their interest and keep it long enough to sell. Right? So emotions are the language of decision. That's it for this one, guys. I appreciate you listening and supporting the podcast. Again, BrianCasellaCoaching.com. Check that link out. Make sure you schedule your free strategy call with us today. I recommend many of you do it, because a lot of the DMs that I get, you're the exact candidate that would qualify for those calls and that needs it. And lastly, for those of you interested in eXp Realty and learning more, become an Icon Ninja with us at eXp Realty. All those links are on my YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and you can find them. All right. See you guys. Peace.